Hi, and welcome to Skeptarchy, the podcast that covers everything through skeptical and anarchist lens. I'm Cory.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Dell.
And I don't know how prepared we are this evening. It might be a shorter show, but...
Well, I guess I can start out. So, for work reasons, I am currently in southern Florida in the Fort Lauderdale area. And I just spotted a news article published either today or yesterday, I think it was today, showing that the state of Florida just hit a one-day record in terms of new COVID-19 cases. So that's fun. This is in a state that has not only no mask mandate, but they have actually prevented, like the state government has prevented any municipalities from implementing any sort of mask mandate. So while I've been down here, there are a lot of like individual businesses that still have signs asking people to wear their masks. A lot of people are not doing that because it's Florida.
Right.
I'm going to be using that rationale a lot because it's Florida. But yeah, this is also in a state where I think the vaccination levels are among the lowest in the country. I could be wrong on that. I didn't look up recent stats, but I do remember seeing it being on the low side. And a state where I have to be for the next week. And so with the Delta and Lambda variants making their appearances in various places, to the point where I actually, just before I left Massachusetts, I saw a story that there was a decent-sized outbreak of the Delta variant in Massachusetts just before I left, in which 3/4 of the people who were hospitalized had been vaccinated. Oh, wow. So that indicates that the Delta variant does have the capability to bypass vaccine immunity.
Right.
So that's going to be a whole other problem. So we know that there is now a variant which can get past the vaccine, which means, and that this particular variant is among the most highly virulent and contagious strains. So basically, everyone should be masking up when they're going to be in any sort of close contact with anybody. And yet lots of people are not doing that. Yeah. Because reasons, freedoms, I guess, I don't know. I do not legitimately understand why people are not doing. Okay, that's not entirely true. Like, I get that there are still people who, for whatever reason, think that the pandemic is some sort of hoax, or that the vaccine is the vaccine is, I guess, fake.
It's going to alter your DNA.
Yeah, something like that. I'm like, I just have to wonder, like, other than like the generic excuse of the government wants to control us, like, why would we be like? I just don't understand the particular skepticism in with regards to like masks and vaccines, because like at the end of the day, if the government actually did want to institute some sort of population control mechanism, that you would think that they would just not say anything about the virus itself and just let people get sick. Like, that seems a far more rational way to implement population control, is just let a virus like this wreak havoc on the community than to get people to wear masks and get vaccines and all that shit. Like,
yeah.
The logic here escapes me, because like, even if you are on the conspiracy-minded side of things, there are far more effective ways for the government or corporations or whatever to achieve, whatever the goals that you think they have are, than to be pushing things like vaccines and wearing masks. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And like the freedom argument just feels ridiculous to me. Like, yeah, sure, if you want to have the freedom to not be forced to wear a mask, okay, but like, you'd think that you would do that purely because it's in your best interest.
Yeah, the whole, like, we've just recently lost our mask mandate, right? And then immediately I got sick. So, and I was wearing a mask way before, and I'm going to continue wearing a mask even now that the government doesn't tell me to, because it just makes sense to wear a mask. Like, why not, right? But apparently I'm the only one here.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And now, this is, of course, leading to more political squabbling. Like, I have a story about the Miami Beach mayor blaming the Florida governor about, not allowing them to have a mask mandate after this, this single day record. And like, of course, all of this shit is going to lead to some form of political squabbling or another, because people are dying. I'm pretty sure this virus has a tendency to kill and maim a lot of people. I think the number that I last saw was upwards of 700,000 since the start. So, yeah. It's I don't know. Like, you'd think people would just be able to look at the numbers of, like, this has been going on for a year and a half now. We have a pretty sufficient amount of data to show that places which tended to have and enforce mask mandates and have higher vaccination levels tended to have lower case rates, lower death rates, all of these things. And so you'd think that people could just look at those numbers and be like, oh, yeah, these are good ideas. These are things that work. And yet now we're fighting over whether whether masks should be mandated. And like one side saying, no, you can't do that. I'm like, it boggles my mind.
I mean, I don't know about like the people in power that are making decisions, but like the average person on the street isn't looking at the numbers like to see if it's effective or not. Like they're just listening to whatever cable channel they watch, which, right?
Honestly, like, that is a perspective that I find so difficult to like put my head in, because like, to me, this does seem like a relatively simple numbers game.
Yeah, they probably don't have the time or wouldn't even know where to start to look for those numbers. I mean, I know it sounds simple because you and I could do it with a 5-minute Google search, but like, that's not in their repertoire of activities they do,
If it doesn't come on their Facebook feed.
Yeah, if it doesn't come on their feed, if they don't hear it on the news, if they don't hear it from the people they hang with. So I was in a Facebook group, and I think it was talking about the recent lawsuit against Liberty University. And someone said, I just don't understand how a parent could have the mindset that a Christian college campus would be a safer place for their kid. That's obviously fucking ridiculous. And everyone was like, you really don't understand why they have that mindset? Of course they do, because everyone they're engaging with is telling them that. They, the bubble that they're in is telling them that a Christian college campus is, of course, much safer of an environment for their child, right? People only make decisions as good as the information they're getting fed, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And that's the thing is like, I haven't done this in years, but I would talk on Facebook sometimes, particularly when I was on Monster Island. And you would argue about some sort of news thing, and I would find a news link where Fox News had actually covered it and said what I was saying, right? But Fox just makes sure those stories aren't on their homepage, you know? Fox just makes sure those stories, you know, I even did it a little bit at the beginning of the pandemic with some folks I was trying to plan an event with, and we were deciding whether or not we were going to cancel it or not, because this was like right before the lockdown started. And someone was saying, oh, it's not a bigger deal than the flu. So I immediately found a Fox News article that showed the death rate and how much worse it was than the flu, because you can find those things if you specifically Google them. Fox News just selectively filters, like that's not what's on their homepage, right? That's not what they're talking about. So it's not even like purposely suppressing things. It's like just selectively only covering certain things and then sort of choosing what you push into people's news feeds. You can completely alter their perception of reality.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's like they're giving themselves a plausible deniability, because, you know, you can then, you know, if you accuse them of, you know, filtering the info and only pushing a particular narrative, they'll be able to come back and be like, no, look, we published this story. And of course, no one's going to ask whether or not it was on their front page, you know, or, you know, it was widely promoted through their social media, because that's not what they're trying to prove. They're just trying to prove, we put the information out there for people to find if they wanted to, but it's not what they're going to promote.
And it just happens to be that their most popular voices, Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson, are out there intentionally pushing the opposite views, and then it gives Fox News, the organization, an easy out, right? And then they can say, oh, well, Tucker is an opinion guy. He's doing a bit or whatever.
They call the two of them infotainment. They're not actual news. You know, and of course, everyone who is actual news, who tends to, you know, as far as TV personalities and, you know, pushes back against their overall narrative, tend to get sacked. I'm thinking of Shepard Smith, I think was his name. Yeah. He was, you know, he was one of their actual news broadcasters.
Yeah, he was the one who was always
and he was probably the only reasonable voice that I noticed on the entirety of the Fox News channel, and he was sacked, you know, pretty quickly. So
my roommate said to me, she's from the East Coast and she's not Catholic, and she said to me when she found out that my parents sent me to Catholic school through 6th grade, she went, oh my God, why would anyone do that? Like, why would anyone ever let their kid go near a Catholic school? Because, you know, her impression was that literally everyone knew Catholic schools were like unsafe places for children, like because of the molestation scandals and stuff. And I just thought that was such a funny impression to have, because like no one thought that, and no one around me thinks that still. Like even people who are not, you know, Catholic or whatever don't think that. Like around here, you know, my parents were like, ooh, smaller class sizes. Awesome. You know?
Yeah. It doesn't even enter into the mindset. Like even now we have Catholic schools all over Canada that are publicly funded, and people just, you know, despite all the knowledge about these others, the child molestations and even the residential schools and all this stuff, and the just general evil of the Catholic Church, people still are like, yeah, but smaller class sizes. I guess they spend an hour a day in church doing Catholic studies or whatever, but that's fine. It'll teach them morality somehow.
Just really, really bad values. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
great.
Yes, because the Catholic Church has such a good history on issues of morality.
Yeah, it's just, like you say, garbage in, garbage out.
What I find really interesting is my husband has a cousin. I was just discussing with his other cousin, you know, so she's been letting her kids get watched by them, and they've decided to send their kids to Catholic school and stuff, even though they were never religious. But they're quite right wing and quite racist. And, you know, they never go to church at all, but they sent their kids to Catholic school, and they're going to have their kids go to church, right? And that's what my parents did with me too. And, you know, I don't, like, my dad, like, barely believes any of it, if anything, like just nothing, no religious feelings at all other than going to Catholic school himself sucked. And yet he thought that was a good idea to send me to Catholic school because that's just like how it's done, and that's just like, it's the framework that they were raised with, and they just like find that traditional framework. Anything outside it is really scary, and like that's why the world's falling apart, is because like traditional values, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And it's just like, because my husband was saying, like, I don't get it. Like, they're not religious. Why are they sending their kids to Catholic school? And it's like, oh, I can completely see why they're sending their kids to Catholic school, because they're, right-wing Fox News people. They think the world is falling apart because gay people exist, Speaking of which, it has been bizarre here. It has been, I probably sound like shit. I have such a sore throat, and it's not because I'm sick. It's because there has been so much smoke over Minnesota. I can't see the other side of my yard. Wow. And it's all smoke from the Canadian wildfires. And it's been this way on and off for almost 2 weeks, like many days in a row, that it just smells like a fire outside. And we've had days where like the weatherman says, air quality warning, if you have asthma, don't do any work outside. But like you could never see it in the air, right? Mm. And we have set record after record in the last 2 weeks of like the worst air quality readings on file, like ever. It's some seriously post-apocalyptic looking shit. Like, it's so bizarre to have, because we're in this horrible drought. Just absolutely horrible, horrible drought. And President Biden just denied the farmers aid on that. So thanks.
Of course.
Thanks, buddy. That was nice. It's not like giving us money or anything. It's just loosening some of the regulations on where we can make hay so that we can have some things to feed our cattle. But they said no. So
no, we can't do that.
Yeah, I'm not real happy about that. But I guess it's because in the past, when they've loosened some of those regulations for emergencies, they've been sued by environmental groups. So I didn't have time to look into the details because I've been super, super busy, but just a little frustrating from my perspective at this point. I don't know. I think there might be some like low interest loans from the government available that I might have to look into just to keep everyone fed. But I haven't been able to get grass to grow in over a month. Yeah. And the grass should not stop growing until October. So far that's cost me $15,000. And that will continue adding up. Because they have to eat something. So,
yep.
Yeah, or they'll be getting butchered. So, which is, I think, what some people are already doing. But yeah, so we're just having a great old time with climate change. Just a complete drought. Yep. I mean, my entire farm, it's like a different planet. It's like, it looks like Mars. I live in a swamp. And it's literally just pure dust right now.
Right.
And then you add that up with the fact that, like, so I live next to a lake. I can't even see across the lake. It's just pure smoke from a fire that's thousands of miles from here, right? It's just, when they talk about, like, what the world is going to look like after climate change, this is it, I guess. Like, You can't breathe. You have a sore throat. They're warning us not to leave our pets outside longer than possible. So I'm sure my cows are really enjoying this on their lungs. That's going to be great. Loving climate change. Excellent time for me to pick a lifestyle based completely on natural weather patterns.
Right. Oof. Yeah, for sure.
Wise decision on my part.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we like in Saskatchewan, there were fires up north. I'm not sure how they've been going, but the smoke hasn't been as bad the last week or so, but the heat is the same and our drought is still the same. So it's like, all the farmers down here, like they're all looking for aid from the federal government and they're all looking for aid from even the provincial government is saying like, hey, all right, this is it. Like,
yep,
it's time to bail out some farmers because they're all losing these crops.
And here's the problem with that. And I know there's probably plenty of people listening that are like, we don't want to give farmers money, but here's the problem. What will happen is all of the small farms, when the pressure goes on, the small farms go out of business and the big farms eat them up. And that's already happening just from like the way late stage capitalism works. But every time you get a problem like this, it accelerates it so much faster. And like, it's seriously, hopefully I don't have to explain to anybody listening why it's a problem to have our food supply completely controlled by sociopathic corporations. Like, that should be, I know we have like this bad impression of farmers sometimes, but like, sociopathic corporations are worse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I promise. Like, that is worse.
Yeah. If you're a person who cares about any kind of ethical farming.
Well, and especially when those corporations, certain corporations have been slowly, large controlling shares have been bought up by foreign governments. Okay. So now this becomes a pawn. You know, if we all think that climate change is going to go the way that it's going, you know, there's a point in time where that becomes a serious pawn in global, politics, that a different government owns our food supply in North America. Like, that should be really scary to people. And I know it just sounds like whiny, but like, food is important. So
what? Food's important?
Nah.
Yeah.
No. that can't be.
And there are problems with you know, especially when it comes to things like animal agriculture. If everybody has to sell off their cattle because there's no feed, it takes years to build that food supply back up. So it can create a lot of instability in the whole situation. And there are arguments to be made about eating meat. However, the kind of animals that are hurt, the kind of farms that are hurt by a drought are specifically those that are based on grazing, are the ones that are hurt the most by a drought. Like, that's the main problem. So you're mainly impacting the grass-based sort of sustainable type agriculture
when everybody
you have drought problems.
I know there's like a big marketing thing to promote grass-fed beef over, say, corn-fed beef. And yeah, there is differences in the way that it tastes or whatever, but it's mostly marketing. But that really affects like the grass-fed beef, obviously. Like, I mean, it might affect the corn-fed beef a little bit, but not to the same level.
So the problem is, and like, this is like a whole other can of worms. The problem is like, grass-fed beef, by some ways of measuring, has a larger carbon footprint. Like, if anybody has ever actually like read carbon footprint studies or like climate change impact studies, there's like a million different ways that you can decide to measure this stuff, right?
Right.
So like, by some measurements, grass-fed beef has a bigger carbon footprint because it takes longer to raise the cattle and they require more acres, right?
Yeah.
But an acre of grassland does not have the same negative environmental impact as an acre of, say, irrigated corn.
Right.
Right? So I really think it's not like easy to say which one is better, and it probably really depends on like where you're at. Like, corn-fed beef in Montana or like Alberta is probably not a great idea because it's not actually a great place for growing corn. Like,
right.
With grazing, you can leave significant parts of the natural landscape intact. You can support a lot more ecology on a pasture than you can on a monoculture cornfield, right? Because a pasture has 10, 15 species of grass in it, probably, depending on how you're doing it, you know? Yeah. So yes, you require more acres. And like, if we wanted to feed everyone the amount of beef that they're eating now, we could not do it grass-fed. So the answer is, we need to eat less beef. And we need to raise the beef that we are raising in a way that makes sense. And like, it's probably not going to make sense the same way everywhere all the time. And It's so complicated, and like you just get headlines that are like, new study shows that grass-fed beef has a literally negative carbon footprint because like you're sequestering carbon from the grass, and it's like, okay, but like how does that work? So it's just like there's so many different ways of measuring it. And then when you look into the studies too, they pick some different measurements they're going to use and others that they're not. And then you find out that a lot of the ones they're using are kind of like educated guesses anyway. So there's a lot of educated guesses in carbon footprint studies. It's very speculative. And I think it's obviously really important work and we need to keep doing it. But as always, media science headlines really condense it down into like unhelpful clickbait that has like conflicting stuff, just like nutrition reporting, right? Like coffee's going to kill you. Coffee's amazing for you from one week to the next. And then you just want to throw the whole thing out. And it's like obviously really important and people should keep doing it, but it is very speculative and not at all uniform the way that people measure it. So
yeah. Just makes me wish I could somehow get you all the grass that is grown in my backyard, because we prefer not to mow because I like the long grass look, and plus, you know, it allows flowers to grow, which is good for bees and butterflies and things like that. So we just kind of let everything grow in our backyard, but like it is a lot of grass. So I'm like, I wish I could somehow send that to you.
The only problem with that where I live is that I would be murdered by mosquitoes and wood ticks if I let too much grass grow.
That's fair. We tend to stay inside most of the time. Yeah, there are definitely mosquitoes and ticks out there, and like we don't spend much time in that. I prefer to let it, stay for, the dog will go out there to do his business, and we have a fair number of, small woodland creatures, rabbits and squirrels and the like, and, plenty of bugs and insects. Although I have noticed that not mowing the backyard this year has seemed to have the benefit of finding fewer ants in the house because they have so much food outdoors, is my guess. Nice. Yeah, so they're able to gather the food they need outdoors because there's all the plant matter, and so they don't. They're not as incentivized to look indoors. Like, yes, I still find a few ants, and we keep things clean. But like I remember last year, at one point the ants had found the cat's food bowl, and that was disgusting.
Wow.
Yeah. I haven't really noticed that much, so it might be a good thing. Although I do remember, so we live in a duplex, and our neighbor had her side of the property treated for insects. So I don't know if perhaps that had something to do with it. There's a lot of things it could be, but at the very least, I do know that letting it grow the way it has been generally good for the environment around. And at some point, I'm going to try and plant some things that don't require a lot of maintenance and tend to grow wild easily, like raspberry bushes. I've heard are decent for that.
Oh yeah, raspberries are so easy.
Yeah, I'm looking for like really, really easy, super low maintenance things because I do not have the time, energy, or motivation to maintain a garden more than maybe half an hour a week of like watering if I need to.
I don't garden at all. I'm so ready for the lawn revolution though. I'm ready for it. Let's get rid of it. I mean, all you see living in farm country is farm goes up for sale, becomes housing development with giant lawns and 3-story gigantic fucking houses, and it's just it's so depressing. It's so depressing because you just drive by it and you're like, that could be food. That could be food for people. But instead it's Trump voters.
Yeah. It's grass that is kept short and thereby fails as even basic carbon sequestration. So I would love to grow food, but I do not have the inclination, motivation, or energy to make that happen because that's not my wheelhouse. So if I'm going to do that, I want it to be super fucking easy. So like raspberry bushes, I've heard are good.
You don't have to do anything with raspberries, I don't think, except for like pick them.
Yeah. So if I can find more, more things like raspberry to plant, then I would be more than happy to. But yeah, like I think at this point, rather than like once kind of we get to the fall, then we don't want all of that plant matter to stay around and just kind of build up. We'll probably bring in, like, I've heard there are services that will bring goats to your property to eat all that up, and it serves as food for the goats. So in theory, you don't have to pay very much, just like the transportation cost, and the goats will eat up the the overgrown plant matter and leave you with a nice
And then you're not hauling a bunch of shit over to the dump and filling up the dump.
The goats get fed and you get a shorter lawn, and like it seems like a pretty good trade-off.
Yep.
Well, and that's the one thing why I think if like we were to recreate the world in the perfect way to get food with the least impact, I think there would still be some animal products around, because goats and cows as ruminants can eat things that we can't and turn it into protein. And there is a lot of land that you really like just doesn't get enough water to grow anything much except for crap that goats eat, especially out in like the Western North America, So like, there's a small niche for that kind of thing still, I think. And I've heard about the goat services around here. They use them a lot for, we have invasive buckthorn and, goats love buckthorn. They will eat the shit out of it. And buckthorn is like, it has big like spikes on it, and it's like so hard to pull, and it's like really nasty. Now, my Ayrshires ate all the buckthorn on my property as well, because Ayrshires are not as picky as other kinds of cows, but goats are particularly good about eating invasive species and just
I was about to ask, what the heck is an Ayrshire?
Yeah. And Ayrshire is the weird breed of cows I have, the rare breed of cows I have. Preserving genetic diversity in dairy cattle. Trying. Anyway.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And they're a little more, they don't make as much milk, but they are a lot less picky. They're a lot better at grazing. They're a lot hardier, as in they don't fall over dead at the slightest brush of a feather. So.
Well, it's interesting because I've been finding a lot of research about like trying to return to more indigenous styles of land management, and one of them involves lots of herding, grazing animals, because what tends to happen is as they graze, they shit, then they their hooves pound that into the ground, so it's kind of like a natural tilling, and then you move them on to somewhere else and come back a year or more later, and the land has gotten the resources it needs to regrow, and so it's a really good way of doing that sustainably. And you don't need a lot of land, but what you need is the land to kind of be natural as opposed to like human managed. So
the rotation is the really key part of what you just said. So the when people grazed kind of after we settled down and became less nomadic, we spent a lot of time just like, because fences were really hard to put up, right? So if you needed to fence animals, it was expensive, it was time consuming. So you just make a big fence and you put your cows in the big fence, right? Well, that's not rotating. And what you just described, Kevin, is rotating. And that's like the really important component of modern sustainable grass-fed agriculture is the rotating, right? So it's plastic, but it's part plastic, part metal. But like I have like electric fences, and this is the same thing they would do with the goats, that you can buy quite cheaply and quite easily, all this really cool shit we've invented, so that you can move your cows, you can give them like just enough food for a day and then move them to the next one and then move them to the next one. And it's much better at mimicking what's natural for the landscape and what's natural for the grasses. And you get a lot more out of, and you stress the grasses less. And it's not just grasses, it's legumes and forbs too, but grasses for simplicity's sake, but hopefully there's a lot of species involved, and you move them. And because what happens is if you just put cows on like 40 acres and you're like 40 acres is enough to support 20 cows and you throw 20 cows out on it, like they'll just keep coming back to the fresh stuff is the tasty stuff. And so they'll just like keep coming back to the fresh shoots over and over again.
Right.
And it's not very helpful. And also they won't spread their manure very well because they'll probably find their favorite spots to congregate, probably in the shade. And then they'll just pound that up and kill the grass there. And that's where all the manure will be. And so rotating them all the time and like, but the problem is like, that's a lot of work. Like,
yeah.
Yes, it's way more doable now than it was 100 years ago, now that we have electric fencing and stuff like that, electric fencing and plastics and things like that. But it's really, it's a lot of work. So like I only rotate like every 3 days or so. I mean, of course, I'm not rotating at all now because I don't have any grass. But like I rotate about every 3 days and that's what I settle for. I used to do it more like every day before I was working full time, but that's the really important way to make it sustainable, because like overgrazing can totally destroy a landscape and rotating is the best way to avoid that.
My understanding is that like the proposal is to go back to more wild type herding and grazing patterns. So like once we kind of get to a point where we're not bickering over who owns what patch of dirt, we can kind of open things up and, we can let the cows have, hundreds or thousands of acres of grassland and they can just, roam around wherever they like. And that will tend to, we may have to move them on to other spots if they're, starting to the point where they overgraze a particular area, but like giving them enough land will presumably allow them to kind of roam a wider space, and they might do that naturally.
Yeah. I don't know if they're smart enough to like purposely move on, but maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, or we may go like the old, like thousands of years ago style herding practices of like, post-nomadic, but where, considerations of who owns what land was a little, a bit less important. And so you'd have shepherds and other styles of herders basically just stay with their groups of animals as they roam, and maybe move them on and protect them from predators and things like that. But I think there's a decent amount of evidence that tells us that going back to these older styles of livestock management might actually be better both for the livestock and the environment in general.
Yeah, it's kind of like you can divide it one way or another, but I think people are really pushing back against the like super technologically advanced way of doing things, which is where you could literally just have like a building and it's full of pigs and the manure from the pigs gets turned into electricity with a manure digester, which we do have, and like, and you have like 40 acres of like super intensively farmed land that provides for all these pigs or whatever. Right. And so then instead of having 1,000 acres that the pigs have to roam, you have 40 acres that are just committed to the food. Right. And then you're presumably via technology properly eliminating pollution risks by the water treatment, and the manure digester, burning it for electricity and stuff like that. So like there's kind of like two different directions to go, but like where we're at now is not working.
Yeah. And like there's absolutely no reason that we can't, get to a point where maybe we can try out both of these things in sort of a parallel arrangement and see which one ends up doing better. And, there's no reason why we can't apply a basic scientific method to it. It's just right now, there's the profit incentive is such that it makes it difficult to actually, get any sort of movement on figuring out, okay, what is actually going to be best for the animals, for the environment, for the land, as well as for, the humans who are relying on all this stuff.
And what absolutely drives me up a wall is that right now, the direction everything is moving is motivated by profit and, marketing, basically, right? Like, what can you sell, right? And so, like, there's only so much room for the right answer in that. Like, there's only so much room for the right answer for the environment, right? Or, like, even for people in general. Like, there's a little bit of a push that way, but, like, not much room for that when it's just about capitalism.
Yeah.
And that's what's really depressing. Because, like, I think most of us would like to just get it right, And, like, we can't. Like, there's just no way to do it in this system, which is really depressing.
Yes, it is. But we'll get there some way, somehow. We'll manage it.
Possibly because we'll have no other options.
Yeah, that's
quite possibly.
That seems, unfortunately, to be the most likely way, I think. But
yeah, it definitely does seem like it's going to end up being, we do it because we're forced to, and not because we realize that, hey, this is, we're only going to realize that the system is killing us when the system is actually killing us. Or I should say, because the system already is killing us, when it starts killing rich white dudes.
Yeah, when it starts killing the people who have the most power.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll realize that the system is killing us when the system is killing us, specifically.
Yeah. Or even, not even you and I, but like people that have the wealth above us even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Jeff Bezos.
I was about to say, in case they might just fly to space
only space
instead,
would have
apparently.
just claimed him.
Yeah. The thing that I've heard a lot of people talking about is how he's talking about not like how important the earth is and how we need to take care of it, but how we need to transfer our factories and stuff out into space. We need to now take our factories and place them on the moon. So we're not.
How is that his take? Like, how is that his take? And when he goes Amazon customers,
because his take is, we need more manufacturing and the earth is running out of resources, but we can't stop growing because the capitalist ideology, the liberal ideology, is one of infinite growth. And so once you run out of resources to grow here on Earth, you have to move things to the moon and to Mars and to Venus and colonize the whole fucking solar system. And you have to move outside the solar system and to other solar systems and other galaxies. And like, it's a philosophy of infinite growth. No one will admit that that's the case, but like, you look at what they suggest, the richest men in the world, all three of them are talking about, okay, I don't know so much if Bill Gates is, but I definitely know Bezos and Musk are talking about moving things off Earth.
Yeah.
So, they may not say it explicitly, but they imply that they are looking for infinite growth, and the only way that they can continue to do that is to move things off world.
I just couldn't believe when Jeff Bezos said, like, Amazon customers and employees, like, you made this happen. Like,
well,
are you trying to get guillotined? Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like,
that's just how out of touch he is, eh?
Tone deaf.
Yeah. Just clueless.
It's absolutely unbelievable. I don't know. It's awful. Depressing. It's been a depressing. Anyone have any good news? I don't have any good news.
Sort of. Okay, so today is August 1st, and this is the first recognized Emancipation Day. In 1834, on August 1st, slavery was abolished from the British colonies, and Canada is now recognizing that as an official day. So,
cool.
About almost 200 years late.
Yes. Yeah, we had slavery in Canada for about 200 years, actually. There were not as many slaves as in the U.S., obviously, but there was like about 3,000 African slaves with actually, like, what do they say? 4,200 people in general were enslaved. And there were some indigenous people that were enslaved at that time as well. So that was slavery was abolished. Yes. Yeah, finally after
now what y'all need is a
years.
land back day.
Yes.
Us too,
yeah.
really.
Yeah. Yeah, we all need a land back day.
Just return the land to the indigenous people, let them figure it out, because the capitalist colonizer shit, that ain't working.
Yeah.
No. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea.
Yeah. But yeah, like I say, my story isn't a very long one, but it's a thing.
Fair enough.
Isn't terrible news. It doesn't solve anything, but it at least starts, like, it recognizes the past wrongs to some level.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like it's a little bit, before we started recording, I was saying I was watching the Olympics and you two were saying you weren't. And I was saying that I like watching the Olympics to support women's sports, kind of. And that's mostly what I watch. And in particular this year, there's like 160 out LGBT athletes competing at the Olympics. And that's more than like any other year combined, like all the other years combined of out athletes. So
impressive.
Yeah, including at least one non-binary trans person on a soccer team. Was it Canada's soccer team, I think? Canada's women's soccer team. And a weightlifter. And so it's kind of like, yes, Canada made a day for Emancipation Day. I mean, great, but it doesn't fix anything. And it's like, awesome, like, women can play brutal sports for no money too. And
and if y'all haven't heard, they can now be forced to join the US military. Yay, women's rights.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's what every men's rights activist was fighting for.
Yeah.
Should women have to join the draft too? No, we should really just abolish the draft.
There should be no draft. What are you talking about?
There should be no draft, yeah.
The thing about the Olympics that I've really noticed this year has been like the sheer number of women who are being fined by the Olympics for not following like these ridiculous uniform
dress
codes.
Code stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's just like beach what was the one? It was like they wore shorts and a tank top like the men, and then they got fined. Yeah, I don't know. Fucking dumb.
Yeah, that one wasn't Olympics. That was like a European Federation tournament or something.
Oh, okay.
The Norwegian handball team. Apparently in beach volleyball they can wear shorts in Olympic beach volleyball. But not that many do. They can wear shorts and they can wear long sleeves, but not that many of them choose to. And I don't know. I read an article that had an explanation from the American team of why they don't like to. I don't remember what it was about though. Cause like they allowed even like long sleeves and stuff because they wanted more participation from people in countries that had more modesty requirements of people, or just cultural stuff where they didn't really want to hang out in their bra and underwear on national television. I did hear an announcer in Greece got fired for being super racist on a live broadcast about Asian players asking how they could see the ball with their eye shape.
Oh boy.
So
Lord.
he was fired immediately, but Greece has had its racism struggles. I also heard a bunch of Russian government officials have been on like an absolute like purity tirade about how manly U.S. women's athletes look, and obviously insinuating stuff about being trans, a bunch of racial stuff about how terrible it is that Black women are winning in gymnastics, like super intense racial stuff, and stuff about, men competing in types of events that they find unsavory for men. I don't know. There's just like, apparently it's just like an all out like media push that Russia is doing.
Wow.
Just like super fascist is clearly what they're doing, right? And I'm just laughing a little bit and like really mad about gay athletes as well. And I'm just laughing really hard knowing how many out lesbians have won gold medals at the Olympics this year. and other medals and just participated. You know, Russia with all their fashy bullshit is like so obsessed with winning medals at these games, right? And yet they're also going to shoot themselves in the foot by being like, but we couldn't let lesbians play. Like, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yes, you just completely limit your pool of athletes. Good job. I'm sure that's going to work out really well for you since you're the ones that are so obsessed with winning. But yeah, it's quite the fascist display watching the countries compete for who can get how many medals between the US, China, and Russia, you know?
Right.
Well, it was interesting. I saw a screenshot from a New York Times report. It was like after the first couple of days of the Olympics, and the way they ordered it was by total number of medals won. Where
right.
You know, I feel like typically you see it by like it's ordered by how many gold medals each country has, right? So the U.S. had 6 total medals, but they only had 2 golds, whereas China had 3. So yeah, that seemed to be a very deliberate decision to put the U.S. on top.
Right.
I bet China's ordering it the other way on their state television. I'm sure.
Probably. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. But I don't know. Like, I was just like so surprised and like, it's just so viscerally gross to read the kind of things that they're saying, you know? And it's just like, and like I said, and also just, you know, shooting themselves in the foot. Like, you know, I just, it's both upsetting and a little bit ironic to have them care so much about this, but also decide to limit their athlete pool so much.
So, I suspect that's the end of the show.
Yeah.
You can find us at Skeptarchy.com. Our Twitter is @SkeptarchyPod, and our Facebook page is facebook.com/Skeptarchy. You can email us at skeptarchy@gmail.com.
You can find me on Twitter at AncomPsychom, and I stream over on Twitch at Anarchist Laboratory.
I'm on Twitter at More Cowbell, and on Facebook as Dell on Earth.
And my Twitter is @SkepticalLefty, and you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/CJBrainstorm. All right.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Thanks for the chat.